yet this year. We still have the iPhone XR coming in a month, so you can count on that video. Hopefully I'll get one in each color, but in the meantime, I will be reviewing these series for watch, so stay tuned for that video. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please let me know with a like, and I'll see you again in my next video. What's up guys, this is Mike, the Detroit Borg with the brand new iPhone XS and the new XS Max. So we're going to take a look at both sizes side by side and compare the three colors, silver, space gray, and the new gold color. So the XS replaces the 10 from last year, but we also get a new larger version called the XS Max. Now the reason they're calling this Max instead of Plus is because the Plus screens were all 5.5 inches, and this is much bigger at 6.5 inches. They're available in three capacities. 64, 256, or 512 gigs of storage. So if you max out the Max, you're going to pay up to $1449 for that phone. That's the most expensive iPhone to date. Otherwise, at 64 gigs, the XS starts off at $999 and the Max starts off at $1099. So there's only $100 separating the two. The good news with these phones is that unlike the Plus models, these phones have identical specs. They have the same cameras, the same processors. The only difference really comes down to display size, battery size, and of course the price. Getting to the unboxing, I have four phones to take a look at here. I have three versions of the XS Max in all three colors, and then I have a gold version of the XS. So first up, let's get to the big guys, the XS Max, and of course they have this nice wrapper around the boxes, which come off really easy. You don't need a knife or anything else to get into these. So once we get rid of that, we can go ahead and lift up those very colorful lids. First up, we have our paperwork. So inside we'll find a quick start guide, our SIM ejection tool, and a set of white Apple stickers. The quick start guide will tell you some of the basic functions of the iPhone XS, but you'll also see reference to something we thought might have died, which was AirPower. So hopefully we're still going to see the AirPower charging mat soon. So getting to the phones from the front, they all look the same no matter what color you get. They all have this nice black slab on the front with that very thin bezel that's only obvious when the screen is on. So silver and space gray are two colors we've seen for a while now. They're the same colors on the iPhone X, but we get a new gold color, and that's a pretty stunning color to look at. Not only is the color more vibrant, but the way it reflects light is quite different than the others. All of them have sort of a metallic reflection to the glass, but the gold has a much more vibrant reflection, so it actually reflects in gold, and you'll see that side by side when you take a look at how it reflects the light compared to the iPhone 8 Plus. So again, it kind of has that matching metallic reflection that makes it look a little more like jewelry. And lastly, we have the smaller iPhone XS, which is the exact same unboxing experience, just scaled for size. But there is one slight difference here, so when you remove the phone, you'll notice that the accessories are flipped upside down. Not sure why that is, maybe it's to balance out the weight of the box. I don't know, but it's just a slight difference we haven't seen before on the larger and smaller models. So before we take a look at the phone, let's get to the accessories, which are a bit of a disappointment. For one thing, we get a 5-watt power adapter. This is the same 5-watt design we've had for almost 10 years now. So unfortunately, the iPhone XS still did not get a rapid charger like a lot of other smartphones. That's really disappointing, especially when you consider how big the battery is on the iPhone XS Max. So even at this price, Apple still isn't throwing in a set of AirPods. So we get a set of wired, lightning connected headphones with an inline remote controller and microphone. But what you'll notice is missing on the back is the adapter that we used to get. So for your traditional headphone jacks, you're going to have to supply your own adapter or just go wireless with a set of your own AirPods or Bluetooth headphones. And lastly, we get our slow charge USB-A to Lightning connector cable. And because I know somebody's going to ask if I don't mention it, the Apple stickers are all white and they're all the same size no matter which phone you get. They're just on a different sheet to fit the box they're in. Setup with iOS 12 is extremely simple. All you have to do is hold your old phone next to the new phone, and you'll be prompted to transfer your information from the old phone to the new phone. The process is pretty simple. All you have to do is scan a code on the front of the new phone, and they pair together and hand off all the login information you would otherwise have to do manually. You're also prompted to set up Face ID for the first time, and it's a two-step process. You basically scan your face twice by rolling it around, kind of coaches you through the process, and they have sped up the performance of Face ID thanks to faster algorithms and a faster secure enclave. Also during setup is a demonstration of the True Tone display. So once again, this is a technology that matches the display's color temperature to the ambient lighting. The rest of the setup will talk you through Apple Pay and setting up Siri, but we also get something that's unique to the Max model, which is the zoomed view. So this is something, again, we saw with the Plus models. So if you want to increase the size of icons and text on your screen, you can select the zoomed view as opposed to the standard view, which is what I selected. Each of the new iPhones also get color matching wallpaper. This is actually a live wallpaper which responds to a 3D press on the lock screen. Now you can change these under the live wallpaper gallery, but what's kind of interesting is that there are different versions for each size of the phone. One set for the 5.8 inch and another set for the 6.5 inch. In terms of design, the XS and XS Plus have a stainless steel frame with that polished finish. It's sandwiched on either side with glass, which has a new formulation, which Apple says is the strongest glass on any smartphone today. But I'll leave that verification for other channels to try out. Once again, we have wireless charging built in for both phones, and the charging coil has been redesigned so it's less picky in terms of placement, but it's also been sped up so we get a faster wireless charge. Just like the iPhone X, the glass is rounded off at the edges to meet the rounded frame of the phone for a nice seamless feel and look. On the right side, we have the side button. On the left side, we have our volume controls and a mute switch. On the bottom edge is the Lightning connector, which does support quick charging if you buy the right adapter, but gone from the iPhone X is the symmetry of the design on the bottom of the phone. That's because we have a new antenna design in this phone, which has a new 4x4 MIMO radio and supports QAM and LAA standards, so we can now get up to 1 gigabit of LTE speeds on this phone. So you'll see additional antenna separators that we didn't have on the iPhone X design. In terms of these displays, Apple is calling them the Super Retina HD display, as they did with the iPhone X, but this time we have the 5.8 inch and the new 6.5 inch. Now both of them have the exact same pixel density, 458 ppi. I think that's the most important spec to Apple because the resolution is otherwise kind of random. So for 5.8 inches, we have 2536 by 1125, while the 6.5 inch is 2688 by 1242. Now one of the characteristics of the iPhone X and the XS is that the screen goes edge to edge. There's no chin, there's no forehead besides the notch. And that's thanks to the design of this OLED panel, which has a display driver that's folded under. So that allows for a uniform bezel top to bottom. So an OLED display gives you that stunning contrast ratio of 1,000,000 to 1. So blacks are absolutely black and colors are extremely vibrant. Peak brightness of the iPhone is like a lot of other Apple displays, 625 nits. That's definitely not as bright as something like the Note, which goes over 1,000 nits, but it's still extremely visible in bright daylight conditions. As before, this is a DC-IP3 display, so it supports that wide color gamut. We also have HDR support, so this supports both Dolby Vision and HDR10 for video. Although we did not get ProMotion for the iPhone, we did get a 120Hz refresh rate for the touch panel. When comparing the size of the XS Max to the regular XS, the first thing that jumps out right away to me is that I'm pretty familiar with the XS Max because it's the same size as the iPhone 8 Plus. The only difference being is that the display is much larger than the 8 Plus. So that does make the Max a little more clumsy to use, especially if you don't have big hands. Even with big hands, it's still kind of a reach. So the XS Max is more of a two-handed phone as opposed to the XS, which I think is the right size for almost everybody. You don't get a ton of extra screen real estate, but things are scaled up a bit more. So things are bigger. Text is bigger, it's easier to read. Obviously, media is much larger with that larger screens. So it's a much better device for media consumption, reading the web, and much more. There are a few software differences between the XS and the XS Max. The big one is landscape orientation for certain apps. So some apps have been formatted for the landscape orientation. We've seen this before with the Plus phone, so we're seeing it again with this larger phone. The new chip in the XS and the XS Max, as well as the XR, is called the A12 Bionic. This is the first 7nm chip on a smartphone. This gets a 6-core CPU, a 4-core GPU, and an 8-core neural engine. This is up from the 2-core neural engine from the A11. So it's up to 9 times faster while using 1/10 of the energy. And the iPhone XS and XS Max get 4 gigs of RAM. In terms of performance, it's mostly geared toward improving battery efficiency, but we're also seeing pretty significant CPU gains and much bigger GPU gains. So the graphics performance of this phone has increased almost 40%. Apple also says that apps launch 30% faster than the iPhone X. The true depth camera, besides being faster, is mostly the same hardware we had last year. The only difference here is a new sensor in the 7 megapixel camera. So that camera gets an f2.2 aperture and can record 1080p video up to 60 frames per second. That's an improvement of 30 frames per second from the last generation. Now, I've been able to visualize how this works in real time thanks to an infrared camera. So you can actually see all of the infrared dots on your face and how it works. Of course, the true depth camera is used for much more than just face unlock or authenticating passwords. We can also use it for things like animojis or memojis. This is something I covered in my iOS 12 video. If you want to check that out, I'll leave that video linked in the description below. We also get an upgraded water resistance rating. We go from IP67 to IP68, which means the iPhone is water resistant up to 2 meters for 30 minutes. Something also new for the iPhone XS is the new SIM technology. So we still have a traditional nano SIM tray, which has a gasket around it for water resistance, but we also have an embedded electronic SIM or an eSIM. Apple has used this before on the iPad as well as the Apple Watch. So that means you can have 2 services running on this device, but unfortunately that service is not yet activated. Sound design has also been a big part of the redesign of the iPhone XS, so we get a set of quad microphones which can be used for stereo audio pickup for the first time on video. The XS also gets a new set of stereo speakers which have been tonally matched, so they're able to produce a wider, more immersive stereo sound than the previous phone, but they're not necessarily louder than they were before.
Captain Christopher Pike requests permission to come aboard. This is awkward, but the best way to get into a cold stream is to jump right in. I'm here as a commander of the Discovery under Regulation 19, Section C.
Although it's hard to hear on camera, the XS Max does have a lower frequency response, so you get a little more bass out of the Max than you do on the smaller XS. At first glance, the cameras on the back of the iPhone XS look very similar to the iPhone X. We have very similar specs, but there's quite a bit new going on here as well. So we still get a set of 12 megapixel cameras, which are optically stabilized. The telephoto camera has an f2.4 aperture. The wide angle has an f1.8 aperture. So that gives us 2x optical zoom with up to 10x digital zoom. But we also get a larger sensor with deeper pixels. In terms of new features, the portrait mode gets a new advanced bokeh and depth control. Now, we've seen something like this before where you can change the depth of field after you've taken photograph. But the iPhone goes a step further. Instead of just blurring the background of the subject, it can actually change the optics of the bokeh effects. So as you slide through the virtual aperture, you'll actually see that the bokeh increases its size, not just its blur. One of the most impressive new features of the iPhone XS camera is something called Smart HDR. It's new with this generation. It takes advantage of the new image signal processor to combine multiple shots to create an improved HDR image. Hey guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, testing out the front-facing camera or FaceTime HD camera on the iPhone X so we can compare it to the iPhone XS. So briefly, you can see how blown out my windows are here. You can't even see the yard in the back. So here we are with the iPhone XS, and you can almost see the yard through the windows. The color's looking much better. It's less blown out and washed out. So everything definitely looks better, and we have those quad mics, so audio pickup with stereo should sound better as well. Now, just to show you the basics of using the iPhone XS, it's identical to the iPhone X, but if you've never used the iPhone X, this might be a bit different for you. So you can double tap the screen to wake it up, and I can also scan my face by getting into view here. So Face ID works really quickly. Unlocks takes me directly to the home screen. Swipe down from the top center to get to your notifications. Swipe down from the upper right corner to get to your control center. You have 3D press actions in here as well. So 3D press to expand out your brightness controls for things like night shift or true tone. So this is where you can turn that on and off. Since we don't have the home button, you just swipe up from the bottom edge to get back home. That also works in the landscape orientation. So when you're in landscape apps, you swipe up from the bottom, whatever the bottom is. Now in terms of getting to your app launcher, swipe up and hold, and then you can see all of your recently opened apps and swipe to dismiss them. You can also swipe between your apps by swiping across the bottom of the screen. To get to Siri, of course, you can use your voice or just tap and hold the side button to do the same thing. To take a screen grab, just tap and hold the side button and the volume up button at the same time and release. To power down, you no longer hold the side key to do it because you'll just get to Siri, but what you can do now is tap the volume up, volume down key, and hold the side key until you get the slide to power off. So as I end this review, the thing that strikes me about the iPhone XS is that the improvements are bigger than I thought they would be. I don't think it's worth upgrading if you already have the iPhone X, but what I definitely would look at is the iPhone XS Max. I'm a huge fan of this gigantic screen, the big battery, and the extra battery life that comes with it, and of course the laundry list of improvements from the better cameras, the better speakers, microphones, and much more. So for me, the iPhone XS Max is definitely the phone I've been waiting to get. But we